Well, it is a great honor to welcome you all. This is another session of the Bioregional Summit. This one is focusing on an idea really that's come into play over the past few years around this idea of the UArctic and the remarkable governance work that's going on around things like the Arctic Circle Assembly and different Arctic convenings. And this is an idea around a bioregional or a thematic network for bioregional planning for resilient rural communities. And just coming back from the Arctic Circle Assembly, had the absolute great honor to meet Arnur and Helena and see Helena again, and Audrey with the University of Highlands and Islands, and Holly Parker with Bowdoin College. We're forming together something that feels like the time is right, and it feels like there's huge opportunities. So this is really you're joining us in a conversation of early days of learning about each other. I have to say, and I'll ask Arnur to say a bit more about this session, but at this Arctic Circle Assembly in Reykjavik, Arnur and several others had this absolutely stunning session on basically what does it mean to create resilience in these rural areas with arts, with new ways of coming together. There was a local mayor from the Faroes. There was a guy who was a sort of a maker of extraordinary power. And the storytelling, it's about this, how do we come together and bring these energies together? So that's what this is about. And it has an institutional structure that may actually be useful. And the question is, how do we make it useful? Is it useful? And how do we then connect with the amazing work that Claire Cooper is leading with Bioregioning Tayside, that Isabel is leading with the Bioregional Learning Center, with all sorts of incredible work in other areas, work that we're connected with in the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica. So it's beginning to imagine a constellation, as we talked about prior, an armada of good energies coming together. So, Holly, let me turn it over to you to basically do a little bit of background. Hey, Tanya, welcome.
Hi, sorry, we're trying to find our way around and finally saw your names in the nature room. I was like, that's the room. So we're here.
Perfect.
Hi.
Hey there. In fact, let's actually do this. Before we hand it over to Holly, why don't we go around and do introductions? So, Tanya, why don't you begin? And why don't you guys both begin, and then we'll hand it off to others. And let's get all the voices in the room and tell a little bit of your background and why this session is of interest.
Okay.
Tanya asked me to start. Okay. Hi, my name is Aron. I'm Tanya's husband, and we have been on this sort of, shall we say, regenerative journey since 2020. And I've been exploring everything that has to do with Arnur, everything that has to do with regenerative principles. Since then, we are running two projects that we are sort of set down a degenerative direction. One is regenerative. Sorry. One is called Access 12, and Access 12 is sort of we see it sort of as a holistic incubator for other projects, including our own project. And we're running one tech project and another Tanya will introduce later. Yeah. And we are working with like regenerative business DNA, for example, that I've been learning in Laura Storm's course regenerative leadership and business.
Yeah.
And then I have sort of my own template that I've been creating throughout the years, which is a process-based language. Comes all the way, which encompasses resource building, communication, direction, navigation, and conscious action. So these are the main factors we're working with at the moment.
And so, as Aron mentioned, I'm the project lead on our project called Totally, and it's a hyper-local community platform that's focused on both personal and community development, as well as sustainable actions or regenerative actions, but we're angling it towards the grant makers, so we're saying sustainable actions. And so that's the project that we're at the moment in the process of development as well. So we'll leave the floor to others to introduce yourselves. Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.
Tanya and Arun, tell us where you are physically.
Oh, sorry, we're in Hafnarfjörður, Iceland, so that's close to Reykjavik.
Ah, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn, you're muted.
Well, just to say, it was lovely to meet with you, Tanya. Just what, a couple of weeks ago, and Aron, I think you were home with kids, perhaps. But it's just amazing, and it was this. I saw your name and connected to Iceland on a thread responding to something that Daniel Christian Wall posted on LinkedIn, and just reached out. And so it's this way of connecting. That, yeah, and we had that wonderful evening in Iceland, and so another key person in that event was Arnur. So welcome, Arnur.
Hi, hello. Hi, I am Arnur Sigurðsson. I'm physically located in Reykjavik, Iceland. Conceptually located east of the moon, west of the sun. Which is the company that I run, and like my vehicle for doing things. The concept we work with is innovation of communities and communities of innovation. This is not the same thing, but related. I spoke in a session that Glenn attended in the Arctic Circle, which was a lot about work that I was doing 2-3 years ago around very remote areas and rural places in the Arctic, and sort of how to reimagine them as not kind of catching up, but being kind of a little bit more leading, and going back into the history of a lot of the places around the ocean that were the highways of the times, were the ships, and they were the first to get the fashion from Copenhagen and Edinburgh, and to think about how the new technologies of today can be sort of used to kind of recenter geographically our worlds. So that was what I was talking about there. Yeah, so that's me. I think Glenn is frozen, or he just maybe shocked. Don't know which, but yeah, who wants to go next?
Helena, maybe if you could turn on your camera if possible and join us. Oh, maybe she's not able to hear. Martha, perhaps you could join us with a welcome.
Sure, I'm happy to join. So I grew up in New England, went to school at one of those other Maine schools, Holly. And then I moved to New York to work in the fashion industry, and now I live in Bern, Switzerland. And I did explain a little bit before. I'll try to do a variation on that. I guess it really comes down to place. Wherever I go, place is really important to me, and who the people are in that place, whether it's all the little neighborhoods in Manhattan, which is really, really diverse, or it's where I grew up in Massachusetts, or went hiking in Mount Washington Valley, or here in Bern. I mean, Switzerland is amazing. I tried to play my role in changing the fashion industry from within, and realized that was just not going to happen. So what I'm basically, I care passionately about how industries move around the globe, chasing the cheapest production, and leave in their wake people with generations of skills and connection with the work that they do. So my initial focus was really on that, and on the people, and on the sustainability. I've been involved in sustainable thinking for a couple of decades. It's gone down. Now it's really about the soil. I want to next study permaculture, ecosystem restoration. I'm really sad that I missed John Todd when I was growing up in Massachusetts in the 1980s and only discovered him recently. But I really am hoping to help to change from the outside, so that it's sort of a kind of creative undermining and recreating, so that really the big industries become irrelevant. And if they're lucky, they'll come knocking on the doors and say, hey, can we work with you? So yeah, so I'm focused on craft of and the importance of community and traditions, and the people who come from other places and what they bring with them, as well as the people who colonized that area, and what we all can learn from the land and from the people who have been living on that land for thousands of years. So in a nutshell, in an eighth-grade shell.
So
Hello.
wonderful to see you again. So welcome, and wow, such important work. Claire, welcome.
Oh, thanks. Lovely to see everyone, and to see you again, Martha and Isabel, because we were just sharing a call before we came on this one. I'm sitting in Eastern Perthshire, which is right in the middle of Scotland. It's very beautiful autumn leaves outside, and I do lots of different things. But Bioregioning Tayside is an initiative I've been involved with getting going over the last couple of years, as a result of getting to know Isabel and getting to know Glenn. And actually John Thackeray was quite a kind of mentor in my early days of understanding bioregioning too. So I'm just kind of like listening in. Glenn's told me heaps about what's been going on in the Arctic, and I can't wait to hear more.
Incredible. Well, Sam, I see that you've joined us. We're simply just going through introductions. So if you could just give us we're welcoming you in with a name, where you're at, maybe a little bit about what you're doing, and what drew you to this particular session.
Thanks, Glenn. I'm Sam. I'm sitting in Bern, Switzerland. Hi, Martha. I have a think tank called Amt für Zukunft, which means Bureau for the Future, and we do a variety of things, projects or accompanying organizations in futures thinking, or getting ahead on big visions, I would say, that probably need some time. And I was drawn here to see you again, Glenn, and I was interested in the topic. So yeah, I'm very curious.
Well, so wonderful to see you. So wonderful to see you, Sam, and thank you so much for joining. Helena, are you able to join us and introduce yourselves? May still be on mute. Audrey, over to you.
Hi, I'm Audrey Decaux, and I grew up in a remote area in France. I worked as a field geologist in East Greenland for many years. I've spent many summer seasons in East Greenland, and I now live just outside of Inverness and working for the University of the Highlands and Islands. And I'm here today to replace Stuart Gibb, who is unfortunately not able to join. But for us as UHI, resilience and sustainability in really remote places is really key for our universities, because we are covering the biggest remote areas in Scotland. So it's kind of all the north and west of Scotland. So we're really, really keen to work with you all and to get inspiration and exchange ideas and so on. So to make sure that our students and the way we work as well is, going that way and supporting resilience as well for remote communities. Thank you, Glenn, for the session.
Oh, thank you so much for joining. And Stuart will be coming down here on Thursday to Dundee. So it'd be great to further connect with him. But thank you so much for joining us on this session, and it'd be great to hear more about the leadership from UHI. And Isabel, if you could introduce briefly, you're well known to, I'm sure, all, but a little bit from you would be really lovely.
Thank you very much, Glenn. So I'm sitting in South Devon, which is in the southwest of England, and I'm a co-founder of something called the Bioregional Learning Centre. And we've been working for about 5 years now and got to know Glenn, we think in 2018. We were introduced by a mutual friend. And Glenn helped us really get on our way with a learning journey that we ran together in September of 2019. And out of that has come all sorts of amazing things, including the summit. I mean, I wouldn't be co-hosting the summit or have helped put the summit together if we hadn't got onto this kind of bioregional path. But we see enormous potential in working in this way. And we're meeting amazing people like all of you who feel the same way, who are doing extraordinary things. And we're excited to see where this goes. We don't imagine we're going to become a network of networks. We are operating like mycelium, under the ground, connecting, supporting, enabling. That's our intention. Thank you.
So beautiful and such a force, Isabel. It's just such an honor to work with you and Claire and others who are just driving these wonderful ideas and connective opportunities. Before we hand it over to Holly to give a background, Helena, are you able to share a welcome and a brief introduction?
Yes, hello. I'm not with the video on because I'm really lying in my bed, sick in a way. But yes, my name is Helena Guttormsdóttir. My background is in biology and art, and I'm working in this landscape architecture program in the Agricultural University of Iceland, but also have had like a special interest in both like a visual elements in Icelandic landscape and also everything about genus loci and special spirits of its place. And also have been working with 2 hours per week in this Breið Innovation Center where I met you also and guided you around. So I'm really interested in having respect for the history in all kinds of layers and lifting up just to make the inhabitants stronger. Yeah, and I don't know if it's enough and I have been working on all kinds of innovation projects.
It's beautiful. And this was a learning journey that we did to the West Fjords last October, almost a year ago, that we met Helena. And oh my gosh, the work that she's doing in the connecting between so many different domains, the sociological, the ecological, the arts community. So it is really great. And Helena is bravely willing to be the representative for the Agricultural University of Iceland as part of the UArctic. Holly, another force of nature and real leader in this space who've helped create this. So Holly, welcome.
Good morning, everyone from Maine. It's really dark here. It's early, but I'm here with you and I'm happy to be doing so. Martha, are you a mule or a bobcat?
I'm a bobcat.
That I can take. My sister's also a bobcat and I coached there for a season, so we're good. Okay, so inter-Maine rivalries, college rivalries. So my name's Holly Parker. I'm the director of the Schiller Center for Coastal Studies at Bowdoin College. It's a recent appointment for me. I've only been there since August. Previously, I was the director of UNE North, the Institute for North Atlantic Studies at the University of New England, also here in Maine. And so I've spent the last oh Lord, 7 or so years looking at issues of sustainability and sustainable development here in Maine, but particularly for our rural coastal communities and some of the challenges that face us as we have to evolve our systems with the incredible environmental change and social change we're seeing in our state. So my center is a beautiful campus. It's 118 acres in a working waterfront community called Harpswell. And I'm looking to, right now, it's largely a marine science field station. Our goals are to use the UN Sustainable Development Goal framework as an invitation to bring in folks from across disciplines, across sectors, to have really good and sometimes challenging conversations around coastal concerns here in the coast of Maine. So it's a big, hairy goal. I love it. And, but I'm only a couple months in, so forgive me if I'm not the most articulate yet. We don't even have a mission statement yet. I'm working on it. So we're very excited to be doing this work. A little bit of history on the UArctic Thematic Network for Bioregional Planning for Resilient Rural Communities. We founded this thematic network in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, which was an interesting process. A little background on the University of the Arctic, for those of you who don't know it. The University of the Arctic is a consortium of over 165 different universities, research institutes, and NGOs, nonprofits that are concerned with the sustainable and just development in the North. The UArctic is a child of the Arctic Council, which is the governance body that handles all of the diplomacy in the Arctic, with the exception on security. So the Arctic Council kind of created the UArctic over 20 years ago. It is a structure that is at times has been a little challenging. I have to say that in the last couple of years, it's become much more streamlined, less bureaucracy, more action. And so we were really excited as part of UNE to help create this group. We needed 3 UArctic member institutions to start it. So many thanks to the Agricultural University of Iceland, as well as University of Highlands and Islands for being our co-sponsors when we created this. The great thing about the UArctic thematic networks, though, is that they do not require network members to be members of the UArctic. So as long as you have that leadership structure, you can invite all sorts, all kinds into your thematic network to help get the work done. I'm going to see if I can do this. Nope, won't let me. Okay, that's fine. So one of the things that I think is unique about this thematic network, particularly within the UArctic structure, most of the thematic networks are research-based, so they're looking to kind of produce research in the traditional sense. We actually very specifically in our purpose statement said we want to activate different place-based approaches to bioregional planning to support our resilient communities in the North. That's a little different. I think it speaks to, though, the work that we like to do in these groups where we want to do things. We don't want to just write a white paper on them. That's kind of boring. I'm not your traditional academic, so that kind of puts me right to sleep. I want to be involved in projects that are making an impact. And so by getting the word out, we can do that. We do have a website. I'm going to drop it in the chat for you guys. Oh, Glenn's already done it because he's a rock star. This is the homepage for the Thematic Network's website. You can see here that we have resources that we've put up. We are actually going to be posting the webinar that we hosted in the spring. When I changed institutions, we kind of lost track of that video. It's now getting posted. So that webinar you see advertised there on the right-hand side will finally be up and running. And so this can kind of be a hub for activity and information and getting the word out. It's a nice service and it's very easy to, and Audrey and I will let you and Stuart know who to talk to at the UArctic to make sure that we're updating the website as we do our work. We had a provisional status for 1 year. We are happily confirmed for full status this year at the UArctic Assembly. So this group is a standing group within the UArctic, and we can grow it in any way that we feel is beneficial to the group. So that's kind of the nice thing about the UArctic. Once you have proven your intent in that first year of activity, they're really, it becomes up to the group to keep that going. Because I moved to a non-UArctic institution over the summer, I can no longer chair this group. Thankfully, Stuart, with Audrey's great assist at UHI, is going to be helping us with that, and Helena at the Agricultural University of Iceland. And I'm busy making sure that Bowdoin College becomes a member of the UArctic as fast as I possibly can. So that's a little bit of a background. Just to give you background on how I got involved. Glenn Page, amazing man, draws people to him like a big benevolent magnet. We started doing work in Casco Bay, and that's how I met Claire. You know, we were in one of those cohorts where we were doing work with Tayside and Casco Bay at the same time. I find this approach fascinating. I also find it incredibly energizing. And so I hope to be building the Schiller Coastal Studies Center in a similar vein. So that's me. That's a little history of the Thematic Network. We can take it anywhere we want to go. If it's part of the Thematic Network, great. If there's activities outside of it, also fine.
So Audrey, maybe a little bit from your perspective, as you and Stuart have considered taking over the leadership, what's some of the things going through, bring us into the room of some of those dialogues and where the energy, you mentioned the potential for student engagement. You mentioned sort of the great excitement around place-based work. Tell us a little bit more why this is important to be, for UHI specifically, to be leaders of this wider thematic network.
Oh, I think Stuart would be best to portray all the views on behalf of UHI. But what I can say is that it is something which is really at the heart of the university. And it's also, sustainability and resilience is actually coming also from, it's not just the leaders of the universities who wants that. It is coming from our students themselves, the students who actually live in those communities. And, the fact that they can have access to learn, about degrees, studies, and so on, staying in their communities. They don't actually need to physically move to a bigger city. So that is one step. And they are all very keen to be involved in their own, communities, and develop in, put, as Oli said, just actions, not just strategy and papers, but actually do something in their own communities. And this student voice is quite clear and loud for us. And because the University of UHI is covering a vast area of the north and west of Scotland, for those of you who are not really aware, we do have a huge amount of remote communities, and islands as well, communities. So it is really, really important for us to understand that. And because a lot of activities also depend or need to be adapted because of climatic change and all what is changes, political change, climatic change, anything which is given, put up on us, we need to adapt to that. And so it is important for us to be part of this group and to share ideas and ways of coping with all what is coming, whether it's, aquaculture, land-based activities, tourism, anything, we need to be on top of it. So I think this is one of an important point for UHI, and Stuart is really passionate about it. And I know he would do a much better job than me to present that, but unfortunately he couldn't be here today.
Oh, that is really important. And it really matters, not just for the wider Arctic, but also just within Scotland, to see the relationship with UHI and all the different universities that are happening here. As the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, keeps reminding us at the Arctic Circle Assembly, Scotland is a near Arctic community, and it intends to be a leader in such. So that's really important. Well, let's shift a little bit over to the amazing work that's going on in Iceland. And maybe Tanya and Aron, if you could describe a little bit more of some of your thoughts, and Arnur, if you could talk a little bit more about the work that you've done. I'm interested in you bringing up the Blue Bank in the West Fjords as well. So let's have a little bit of a discussion around the role potentially of weaving together good work in Iceland And I'll put in the chat a video. We don't need to show it, but this is a video of a learning journey, a proto-learning journey we did to Westfjords last year. But so Tanya and Aron, maybe let's begin with you. Talk a little bit about your thoughts as you hear this network evolving and how you might be engaged.
Anything come to mind?
Well, what we are experiencing, like in this event, that like the leading edge of the bioregional approach is happening on a global level. But what is also interesting, and you see it with, like for example, with what Arnur has been doing, is there's already, because Iceland is an island, so there is, you know, already bioregional, you know, work happening here, and it's a small country. So it's something that like we are like maybe learning to, like what often happens to us Icelanders, learning to appreciate the good things that we're already doing. And sometimes we need like a global kind of perspective to be able to see it. And so that's kind of what I am learning. I'm learning to see there are people actually doing great things here in Iceland. There is quite a bit of sustainable and regenerative work happening already, even though people might not be aware that they are doing regenerative work. There are many different interesting projects all in tech industry that we are interested in. There are, you know, like, as you know, Iceland it runs mostly on green energy. I mean, of course, there's not like a lot of, it's not like Germany or anything like that, where there's a high need of energy consumption. It's a small country, but we are still able to run most of the households and companies on geothermal and green energy, which is a very positive thing. There are so many different things that are interesting in terms of where we are coming from. Also, in bringing this kind of awareness of like into company culture and blending in like the human factor with the natural awareness and seeing it and bringing in the biomimicry factors. That's what I have been learning in the regenerative leadership and business approach. And that is something where Tanya wants, and me and Tanya want to bring in through our platform, the upcoming platform, the Totally platform, and using like technology and positive incentives to support sustainable and regenerative behavior for general, you know, for the general mind. So,
and we view technology not as a replacement of connections and awareness, but an extension. So we're quite technology focused here in Iceland, I would say. So we see it as a way to have the technology available and then educate through that in very subtle ways, to bring that awareness of, for example, first hyperlocal, but also progressively bioregionally. So we see there is that potential to bring that about as well. And you know, we're in the area of Hafnarfjörður, which is 6 municipalities all together in one small area of what you would say about 200,000 people, all in one little area. And we've kind of played with the idea, like, what would the name be of our bioregion? And the one thing that kind of stands out is Mountain Esja. So that we're the people of the Esja mountain. It's just an idea, but you know, it's and as you were mentioning, the Westfjords is you know, that's where you've been journeying, and it's a clear bioregion unto itself. So that was also an inquiry for ourselves, like, what are the bioregions here in Iceland? We have very specific areas like the Eastfjords, Westfjords, the South. So that's an inquiry unto itself. Where do we start mapping? And I think that might be the first question for us, or inquiry process. And I see that with you, Glenn, that might be something you can assist us with in that process. So I think we're in baby steps, really. Going, what are bioregions? And I'm interested in the bioregioning journey, for example, as you mentioned. So Arnur, I think your experience of the West Fjords and all the work you've done there would be amazing for people to hear.
Yeah, I'll try to be amazing. I only heard the concept of bioregions a few weeks ago when I met Glenn and Tanya together. So I'll defer to you what is of interest to you to hear about and whether it connects to this frame of bioregions.
Well, maybe speak a little bit to what led you to the creation of the Blue Bank and what that was, because even though that has this sort of institutional structure, I think that was an epicenter of bioregioning. You just weren't using the word, and words are light and loose, but what you created there to me was extraordinary. So a little bit of that story would be amazing, and then also bringing up to date for the presentation that you were just part of and the groups that you're working with in the Faroes, etc., around this idea of rural and how that's going. Would be fantastic.
Okay. So the first thing I have to say is that I didn't create the Blue Bank all by myself, or there was a lot of work that have been done by fantastic people before I became involved. So start by backing off a little bit. But I'll tell you about the Blue Bank. So the Blue Bank is located in Þingeyri, which is a village of 250 people that has had a lot of decline in industries and demographic. A lot of the young people have moved away. It's an hour away from the next big town, so to speak, Ísafjörður, and that town is already quite isolated. So as the years there was a very brutal sort of privatization of the fishing industry 30 years ago, and Þingeyri has been on a sort of slow burning decline ever since, which can be seen among other things in like you said, in institutions leaving, institutions that used to be like a backbone of the community. The fish industry, of course, then the municipality merged with another municipality, so the town office went away, then the cooperative, and then finally the credit union, the bank of the village, had been taken over by a national bank. And by the time our story starts there, they were closing the branch altogether. So we had the situation where there was a building there. Nobody needed it for anything because, who needs an office building in an ex-fishing village? And there was a need for replacing the services that have left the village and the institutions. But there was also a very critical need, we felt, to not try to sort of go back in time and not try to replicate the past that we already knew where that would lead us. So our job with the Blue Bank was, in our minds, was to create a new institution that in some way could fill in the gaps of what had been lost, but in other sense also start an experimental path of sort of looking ahead and looking towards sort of adapting to new realities. In a place like Þingeyri, it's hard to describe it if you haven't experienced it, but I'm sure in all of your communities you've experienced something similar, where I sometimes say it's the lungs and the hearts and the harbor, because the harbor really is like an organ in the bodies of the people who live there. If there are boats coming in and out of the harbor, people feel good. If there are no boats coming, people feel uneasy. And it's hardwired into the community, the fishing industry. But there hasn't been much fishing industry there for 30 years. So at some point there's a there's a time to kind of do something. And so we actually established the old school banking services there in a cooperation with the bank, where sort of the elder generation that didn't use the internet could come and get support in, well, they could do some basic banking, but also get support in using online services. And then we established a co-working space, started hosting digital nomads from all around the world, started sort of creating different services and programs there. And then we started a path of connecting to other Arctic communities, and sort of, working on thinking about how do we place ourselves so that it is inspiring for young people to be here and come here, so that you're not confined to just 2 or 3 industries. So that how do we, look forward and see the threats and the difficulties and the challenges that we are facing. How can we flip the script and see some of those processes as being opportunities? Because we might want to change the wheels of certain times, but it's unlikely that we can on our own do that. So in some way we need to adapt rather than just look towards the golden years 30 years ago. Yeah, so more or less this was our project, and the Blue Bank is still up and running. We left 2 years ago, but yes, it was a bit of like the project of a creative institution, and coming into a place that had seen a lot of negativity for 30 years and see what could be done in that circumstance.
And we visited that on our learning journey. It was just extraordinary. And it was just a jewel in this wider bioregion. And one of the things that has impressed me so much that Arnur has shared is the resilience that is so important to people of the West Fjords. They need to. It's sort of like coastal Maine and rural Scotland. We really need each other in these communities to survive these events, whether it's flooding, whether it's a massive snowfall, whether it's coastal storms. And so it's through that it creates opportunity. Now, Arnur, if you could also just briefly speak to the panel that you were on and perhaps helped shape, and that what you felt about that as a expression of possibility. We often use the term the adjacent possible, and I think that session really helped me understand the adjacent possible in the rural Arctic.
Wow. So I think the title of the session was Remote Places, a Window of Opportunity, or something to the effect, and it was speaking of like the possibilities of remote work and location independent living. I guess the thing that I wanted to say there that I didn't fully was the concept of windows of opportunity. I think they are what characterizes them is that when they emerge, they never look like windows of opportunity. They look like silly things, and they only look like windows of opportunity 3 or 4 years later. So if you're in a conference talking about windows of opportunity, you probably they already were closed, or they weren't there anymore. And it's also another thing I wanted to say, but I was sensible enough not to say it, is that I was there joined with Dennis Holm, who was a mayor and collaborated with me on all these windows of opportunity in the Faroe Islands. And well, he is not a mayor anymore. He's an ex-mayor, and I'm not the manager of the Blue Bank anymore. So there you go with the windows of opportunity. They don't always sort of bring you personal success or progress. So I think that I guess where I'm going at with this is that the opportunities, you know, the windows of opportunity, they always look kind of nonsensical when they are really open. And I do think that the way to approach difficult situations and, you know, difficult existential threats has always you have to have the guts to try things that may lead you to becoming an ex-mayor, for example. I don't know if I answered your question, but I think there was a question from Holly. She raised her hand.
I mean, what you're saying, Arnur, is very powerful for the moment that we're in here in Maine. And Glenn, I'm thinking of our kind of monofishery of lobstering and how we're in an existential moment that some recognize and some do not. And I think they don't recognize it out of fear and anxiety of what comes next. And so I apologize. This is my intern. This is Clementine, and she's feeling very needy at the moment. So, you know, I would love to find a way to not go those 30 years of discomfort following what we know is going to be the climate impacts on our lobstering industry and get ahead of that, you know, and how do we recognize those windows a little more clearly earlier on so that we can come up with solutions that, again, may not be popular, they may not all work, but have that innovative culture. And one of the notes I put into the chat was it's also important to recognize our histories of innovation in these places where we live. And Maine has a very rich history of innovation, but we landed in a monofishery not so, you know, in the mid-20th century, and we haven't really had to change. And that's going to be really hard for our coastal communities. And I'm thinking of the institutions too that, you know, leave a community, and where I work in Harpswell, it's all about the post office, the library, our schools, and our town offices, you know, and if we lose those, forget it, Clementine. Not happy. All right. So yeah, a lot of what you're saying, Arnur, really resonates with me personally, as I try and think of ways that we can bring these conversations to the fore with urgency that maybe people don't want to have right now. You know, it's kind of cracking that anxiety and fear so that people can feel urgency without feeling terror or potential loss, I guess.
Yeah, beautifully said. There's so storytelling and video matters. There's a new video called Blackport that's all about the quota process in Iceland, in the West Fjords, and its relationship with Reykjavik. Oh my gosh, the storytelling there of using ecosystem-based fisheries management and how it completely goes awry. It seems absolutely stunning in terms of storytelling and how we do that. Well, let's go over to what is often referred to as the third poles, the Alps, and maybe Sam and Martha. First of all, do you guys know each other? And second of all, what is this? How is this resonating to you? Because you two are near Arctic neighbors, and there's a lot of issues of rural communities and resilience and the power and potential of bioregioning. So I'd love to hear from you on these topics.
I'm going to let Sam speak because I'm an immigrant. So these are not my mountains. I mean, they are, but they're not. But Sam and I know each other. Sam and I met about, I don't know, 6 years ago at a Chaos Pilot event where he was working, and we stayed in touch, and we keep saying, hey, we've got to get together, or we tag each other in posts on LinkedIn. So it was just really, wow, you are Glenn Page, you are the super magnet, bringing even locals together.
Well, Sam, what is rumbling through your mind as you hear these concepts?
Yeah, a lot on one side, and on the other side, yeah, I wonder how we can get into action. regarding the mountains and the glaciers, yes, they are melting. I'm sitting here having not really a view, but from home I have a view on the mountains. But yeah, we during the summer in Bern, you swim in the river Are, and that's basically water from the mountains, which is amazing. And I think more and more the regions get aware that this will not be a sustainable business model as it was up until now, to have a lot of tourism that is based on skiing and winter sports and so on. And I heard from, maybe some of you know, the Wies Academy that is newly founded. I was at the inaugural symposium, and now I met some people from the Wies Academy that mentioned that 5 cities actually are working on becoming energy positive cities, they call it. I'm not so sure how much progress they make. And now we decided as Amt for Future that we would like to unfreeze a project that we thought of maybe 3 years ago. It's called Bern 2031, where we wanted to really bring in future thinking and dreaming and envisioning and bringing how could it be more into communities by interviewing mainly people who are active and sharing their dreams of what kind of a world they are working on. And now we agreed that this was maybe too small, and I have become a big fan of the donut, because it's so amazing how easy it becomes suddenly to make people interested for quite complex systems issues, and we want to try to use that as a communication means to bring initiatives together that already has started a little bit, because in my eyes that's one of the things I would love the most, if more people become aware that we are all, or many of us, are working to bring us in this living zone where we all thrive, from maybe yoga teachers to new businesses that make plant-based food, that fight for animal rights, that try to start up companies that can provide more repairable products. So, and what I'm really curious about this session here, to get a little bit of inspiration, is on we here in Switzerland and yes, in Bern, most of us are spoiled. We are rich. Many of us don't see the need to act, so everything is okay. Yeah, okay, the glaciers a little bit, okay. And I wonder how we can become eager to be motivated, not just by catastrophic events and we have a responsibility, and then when we get to vote, we vote no, we don't want to take the responsibility. That has repeatedly happened in Switzerland. We have a wonderful democracy, but we don't vote as we should. Sorry to say. So I wonder how, in a place like Bern, wonderful city, we have everything we need, can we activate people to mainly take responsibility, because we step over the planetary boundaries. And yes, there are poor people in Switzerland, and also in the city there are homeless people. And it's probably hard to communicate, but maybe the connection between homeless people and stepping over planetary boundaries, something like this. I don't know. I really think, or that's what we decided last week. We want to start this Burn 2031 thing and use the donut to communicate that we are all in this together in different ways, but we're all in this together. Sorry, now I took some.
No, that is absolutely wonderful. And I defer to the brilliance of Isabel and the team in South Devon. If you don't mind mentioning, Isabel, the work that you've done on applying the donut, and then Tanya will go over to you and Aron after that. But Isabel, if you could just mention the incredible work you've done with applying the donut.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. So the whole story of how we made the Devon Donut is on our Devon Donut website, which is now in the chat. But it emerged from an online meeting to which Kate Rayworth had sent a video, and the chat went on fire with people in Devon saying, we've got to make a donut. And we'd known for some time that we wanted to create a baseline for our bioregion, that we wanted to be able to point to thresholds and indicators and so on. So in making the donut for Devon, we clearly were not working at bioregional scale. We were working at much bigger scale, but I keep finding that we work at very small scale and medium scale and big scale. And that probably wasn't a problem for us. But it really got us into thinking about the importance of data, and data not just in terms of kind of hard data, you know, facts and figures, but storytelling and narrative and lived experience as being data as well. And we did a poll, an informal poll halfway through this process, in which a collective, which ended up being 170 people, many of whom had organizations and networks of their backs, met every fortnight for a year to make the Devon Donut. And what they wanted to do in the end was not really work with data, but was to tell positive stories and light fires all over Devon. And that really gave us the encouragement to keep going. But if any of you want to know more about the Devon Donut, go to the website, but also, of course, you can connect to me via the Kiko chat map. From that, you can get my contact details.
So in Portland, we have the best donuts in the world. It's called Holy Donuts. And we're working with a group framed as conscious capitalism, and to bring the donut in, but we need to work with a food system so that we're actually eating the donut as well. They were having locally made, they have literally potato donuts. So we need to ingest and build our sustenance from the donut as well. Tanya and Aron, you have your hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what Sam was saying about like being spoiled, and that is also a little bit of our problem here in the north, in the global north. We do have a lot of material resources, and we don't really see the global, the climate crisis. We don't experience it firsthand, so it's very sort of easy to just like be detached from all of it, but that is very much our problem. But at the same time, our opportunity, like Arnur was talking about, our window of opportunity is to leverage those privileges that we have, and I think it's almost like not just a practical thing, but a responsibility as a planetary citizen. And we're talking about things in a bioregional perspective, but it is very important that I think we incorporate that we are all living in a one biosphere, and we're able to use whatever resources we have extra in our bioregion to support at least more awareness that we can support interconnectedness around the globe. I think that I don't know how to solve that problem. That's the journey that we are on. We think that technology could help to some extent, and just building these kind of network and mutual awareness. But we do have the same problem here. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, beautifully framed. Martha.
So I can very much relate to what Sam is saying. Living here in Bern, it is people have pretty conscientious lifestyles, but they, I think, very often feel they're doing enough. You know, they ride their bikes, they buy from the local farms, but it's not really a feeling that I have experienced of people really wanting to come together, which I'm really happy to hear. Sam, we're going to meet next week. But I grew up in an area of New England that was very much similar to where I live here. And when I moved to New York, I felt like this is life. You know, you're really confronted with everything and there's no sweeping misery or hardship under the rug. And so since I've been here, I've become more involved with the migrant community. And there are I don't know how, it's not necessarily every community, but there are a lot of residences for asylum seekers and refugees, yet they go sort of unseen. They're sort of invisible. And that's where I feel that we can really reach out to people because they have such a wealth of knowledge. A lot of them are farmers. A lot of them are they know how to do things, how to make things. And also, as Sam pointed out, there are a lot of people, there are more people than one would realize who struggle to find enough to eat. And it was like that in my town of Concord, Massachusetts, where there was at the supermarket, you could actually put little tiddlywinks, little things you could choose whether you wanted to support the local high school, if you wanted to support this thing called Open Table. There are a lot of people who have trouble even just buying their food, but they're invisible. We don't see them. So I think we all have to make more of an effort to dig a little bit deeper and then reach out and find ways to connect.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Well, I'd like to, as we are nearing the end of this session, and thank you all for your willingness to go a bit beyond. Helena, as you hear all of this, and as you think about the thematic network and the role of the Agricultural University of Iceland, what are some of the thoughts that come to your mind about this discussion and ways to bring this coherence and perhaps a broadening network together? Oh, maybe she said she wasn't feeling all that great, so maybe she's resting peacefully. And Alika, we see that you've joined and welcome to this conversation. Is there anything that you'd like to add from your perspective? And if you could introduce where you're from and any thoughts regarding the conversation? Okay, maybe another taking rest as well. Well.
Glenn, I want to jump in there because Annalika does amazing work with constellations and she does them online. And
there she is. Good, perfect.
She did one for the Osa Peninsula.
Really?
Where you've been working, Glenn. Yeah, over to you, Annalika.
Hello, hello. I just joined. Yeah, the work with the Osa Peninsula was fantastic because what we did was in the constellation, we made visible the undercurrent. And from that came an opening that was not in the awareness of the people who are leading the initiative.
Incredible. If you could explain that a bit more, that'd be wonderful.
You might want to experience it actually, because it's kind of hard to explain exactly what's going on. So there are 2 more workshops that I facilitate tomorrow, Tuesday, and on Wednesday, and you will see them on the calendar under Regenerative Constellations. And also in the discussion forum, I put a write-up of 3 constellations. So there you can read the story on the Osas constellation, and also on one about reintroducing new species in a certain bioregion. What aspects are connected to that and what is important there.
Oh, really interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. We we very much appreciate the importance of the OSA, 2% of the world's biodiversity and under rapid development pressure. And we led a brief learning journey there last year, or this last March. And I just put the story map in the chat. But this is the power, I think, of what this thematic network can do. And yes, it is under this institutional structure of the UArctic, but it's like, as Arnur says, the window of opportunity. There may be something about having a relationship with the UArctic that could be useful. Now, certainly the work with UHI, the Agricultural University of Iceland, Bowdoin College is really important. So that in itself is enough, but there could be ways as this thematic network develops. So I'd like to just take this moment and invite you all to consider what might be a role, what might be a way to be part of that. And again, it's not as if this is an invitation for just one thing. It's really an invitation for more relationship building, more connection, more spending time together. I'm here in Scotland, and we just spent the whole weekend with Claire roaming around the bioregion here and doing this unbelievable transfer of ideas, failures, opportunities, and that's what it's all about. So the more that we can do that together, the better. Audrey, maybe if there's anything you'd like to say regarding the thematic network and the home being at the University of Highlands and Islands, is there anything you'd like to add as we close out?
I think it's very exciting to get it in Scotland, and it's really exciting for us as well. As you know, at the university we have a lot of archaeology and history, and you know, a lot of linked to the north, archaeologically, historically. So it's really a privilege, and it's really exciting to have that.
Incredible. Well, thank you all. And Helena, are you with us? Okay, hopefully she's resting peacefully. Well, just want to say thank you all. This was really wonderful, and thank you, Isabel, for the convening that you've been doing and the amazing amount of work to pull this entire event together and to welcome us in and create the space. When I mentioned to her that I was spending time in Reykjavik and going to the Arctic Circle Assembly, she said, "Oh, would you consider?"
Yeah, I think Glenn's frozen for a minute, but yes, I said that's such a great opportunity. We would love to have people from the Arctic take part in this summit. So thank you so much for all being here. It's been amazing. And as I said at the beginning, this has been recorded and it will be shared. So all the many people, I think they've got about 900 people signed up for the summit, will be able to view the recording later on. And the summit's just the beginning. You know, we recognize there are many, many conversations that we hope will keep running beyond the summit, and we want to keep this momentum going and keep you all connected and bring more people into the conversation. Yeah. So thank you so much. I think I'm going to have to say goodbye because Glenn has vanished.
Thank you.
And hope to see you later on. And yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Leave a trail of crumbs, Isabel, so we know where to follow you next.
Yes, I can certainly do that. And you can find me on the Kiko chat map. And my next session is this afternoon with Daniel Christian Val.
Yes.
If you want to come to that,
I
it's a
will be there.
conversation about, I think we're going to talk about what are bioregions and what are the ethics and values that inform them, because this isn't a neutral space. Yeah, hope to see you
Thank you so
there.
much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Thank you
okay,
so
bye
much.
bye.